When I was younger, being home alone was a regular occurrence. Whether my parents were out for a night on the town or traveling for work, I found myself in the quiet company of our empty house more often than not. As an only child, I had mixed emotions about these solitary evenings. On one hand, I relished the freedom to crank up the volume on my Xbox or lose myself in whatever activities caught my fancy. Popcorn and pizza became my culinary companions, with a side of Mountain Dew to fuel my late-night gaming sessions. Call of Duty battles echoed through the house, accompanied by the soundtrack of rock or rap music pumping through the speakers. But amidst the thrill of independence lurked moments of unease. Those solitary nights sometimes felt more ominous than liberating. I'd brush off my creeping sense of anxiety, chalking it up to imagination, or simply being told it was just my nerves acting up. Yet there were times when the fear felt all too real, like an unwelcome guest lurking in the shadows of our home. One frigid evening in 2016 stands out vividly in my memory. The chill of the winter night seeped through the windows as I settled onto the couch, ready to lose myself in a movie. Yet a subtle discomfort gnawed at me, a sensation akin to being watched. Despite reassuring myself that it was merely my overactive imagination, the feeling persisted, refusing to be ignored. Suddenly, a surge of adrenaline jolted through me, prompting an urgent need to double-check the locks on our doors. Despite confirming their security, an unsettling sense of unease lingered. Fed up with my own paranoia, I decided to call it a night, hoping that sleep would offer respite from my racing thoughts. However, sleep proved elusive. In the dead of night, a trip to the bathroom turned into a heart-pounding encounter. The muffled sound of voices outside sent me into a panic. Without hesitation, I donned my snow boots, grabbed my phone, and rushed to the living room, dialing my mother in a frenzy. As I recounted the chilling events unfolding, I made a startling discovery. The front door stood wide open, a glaring invitation to the unknown. Panic surged through me as I secured the door and peered anxiously into the darkness beyond. With my mother's voice offering a lifeline of reassurance on the phone, my father sprang into action, contacting the authorities. Yet when the police arrived, they found no trace of intruders, save for the inexplicable footprints dotting our yard. To this day, the incident remains a haunting mystery, dismissed by skeptical parents and leaving me with a lingering sense of vulnerability. Despite the lack of tangible evidence, the memory of that night continues to linger, a chilling reminder of the thin veil between safety and uncertainty. And while my parents may doubt the validity of my experience, the fear that gripped me that night remains all too real in my mind. At the age of 19, I found myself unexpectedly alone for the weekend. With my mom and older sister out of town, I settled into the familiar routine of solitude in our Georgia home. Saturdays were my sanctuary, a break from the demands of schoolwork, and having the house to myself only sweetened the deal. Little did I know, this particular Saturday would etch itself into my memory for years to come. As the clock edged closer to midnight, I lounged on the couch, engrossed in a nature documentary. The tranquil scenes lulled me into a drowsy state, prompting me to step outside for a quick smoke on the front porch with my loyal companion, my bull. Returning indoors, the haze of relaxation was shattered by a chilling realization. The back patio door stood wide open. Panic gripped me as I grappled with the unsettling truth that someone had breached our sanctuary. How had I forgotten to secure the door? How had I missed such an obvious intrusion? With trembling hands, I armed myself with a knife from the kitchen and embarked on a nerve-wracking sweep of the house. Despite my frantic search, there was no sign of the intruder, leaving me questioning my own sanity. Could I have absent-mindedly left the door ajar, only to realize it now in a haze of paranoia? The notion seemed implausible, but in the absence of any other explanation, I was left with no choice but to accept the unsettling reality. Cut off from communication with my depleted phone minutes, I resigned myself to a restless night's sleep. Clutching the knife tightly, I barricaded myself in my bedroom, every creak of the house amplifying my sense of vulnerability. Hours dragged by in agonizing silence until a restless impulse drove me to seek solace in another smoke. Opening my window, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. A truck idling in my driveway, its occupant obscured in the darkness. Heart-pounding, I watched in disbelief as they swiftly departed, leaving me to confront the aftermath of their intrusion. Racing outside, I found my worst fears confirmed. Not only had they violated our home, but they'd also plundered it, leaving behind a gaping void where our belongings once stood. The realization sent a shiver down my spine, lingering long after the physical remnants of their presence had vanished. In the aftermath of the ordeal, questions swirled in my mind, unanswered and unsettling. Why had they spared my room? Was it mere chance or something more sinister at play? Even now, decades later, the memory of that night casts a shadow of unease, a reminder of the fragility of security in a world fraught with uncertainty. At 28 years old, I found myself facing a harrowing ordeal that shattered any illusion of security. With my wife away attending her uncle's funeral, I was left to hold down the fort solo. Money was tight, and the responsibilities of being the primary provider weighed heavily on my shoulders. Our home wasn't completely empty, though. We had our faithful golden retriever, Elsa, and our precious baby boy, Dylan, who was barely a year old at the time. As evening fell, I settled Dylan into bed, hoping for a peaceful night's sleep. Yet, as I lay beside Elsa, the familiar ache of anxiety crept in. It wasn't uncommon for me to struggle with sleep when my wife was away, call it overthinking or simply a need for reassurance. But I found solace in knowing she was safe. Despite taking melatonin to ease my restlessness, I found myself jolting awake to chaos. Elsa's frantic barks mingled with the blaring of the fire alarm, and Dylan's cries pierced the night. Panic surged through me as I scrambled to assess the situation. Racing to Dylan's room, I scooped him up and hurried to confront the source of the commotion. The kitchen was engulfed in billowing smoke, flames licking at the ceiling with ferocious intensity. There was no time to hesitate. With Elsa by my side, I ushered Dylan to safety and dialed emergency services. The arrival of the firefighters was swift, but the damage had already been done. Our once peaceful home now lay in ruins, consumed by a blaze that tore through it with merciless speed. Amidst the wreckage, the truth emerged. This was no accident. Forced entry at the garage door bore witness to a deliberate act of arson. Gasoline, maliciously doused throughout the premises, fueled the inferno that ravaged everything in its path. As the flames were subdued, a chilling realization settled in. Someone had targeted us with malicious intent. In the aftermath of the fire, questions lingered like smoldering embers. Who could harbor such hatred towards us? Why were we chosen as victims of this heinous crime? Despite the efforts of law enforcement, the perpetrator remained elusive, their motives shrouded in mystery. We sought refuge with my parents, our shattered sense of security serving as a constant reminder of the trauma we endured. The scars left by that night run deep, a haunting testament to the fragility of safety in an unpredictable world. Yet amidst the ashes, we found strength in each other, determined to rebuild our lives despite the shadows that lingered.